Boss Humiliates poor woman. Didn't know she owned the building. He drenched the filthy beggar in front of the entire office to teach her a lesson. But he didn't realize she was actually the owner of the company. The silence in the open plan office of Brightline Holdings was deafening. It wasn't the quiet of productivity, it was the quiet of terror. 42 employees sat frozen at their desks, their eyes wide, fixed on the center of the room where Trevor Huxley, the regional manager, stood panting slightly, a plastic cleaning bucket in his hand. In front of him stood Cassandra Wynne. She was dripping wet. Ice-cold water ran down her hair, plastering the strands to her forehead. It soaked through the shoulders of her thrifted faded black blazer and pooled in her scuffed shoes. She blinked, water dripping from her eyelashes, mixing with the shock that had momentarily paralyzed her. "Maybe that will wash the stink of failure off you," Trevor sneered, tossing the empty bucket aside. It clattered loudly against a filing cabinet, making 3 junior analysts flinch. "I told you, this office is for closers, for professionals, not for trash that wanders in, looking for a handout." Cassandra didn't move. She didn't scream. She simply raised a hand and wiped the water from her eyes. To understand how it came to this, you have to look back just 3 hours. Cassandra Wynne wasn't a beggar. She was the sole heir to the Wynne dynasty and the majority shareholder of Brightline Holdings. She lived in a penthouse that cost more than the entire building they were standing in. But for the last 6 months, she had been receiving anonymous emails. "The culture is toxic. Huxley destroys people for sport. Help us." Cassandra had decided that ruling from the ivory tower was blinding her to the rot in the foundation. So, she created a persona. Cassie, a temp worker from a staffing agency, arriving for her first day as an administrative assistant. She dressed the part, scuffed shoes, no makeup, cheap clothes. From the moment she walked in at 8 a.m., the abuse began. The receptionist ignored her for 20 minutes. When she finally got to the 4th floor, Trevor Huxley didn't even look at her resume. He looked at her shoes. "We have image standards here," he had scoffed, walking past her. "Don't let clients see you. Stick to the filing room." For hours, Cassandra watched. She saw Trevor berate a pregnant marketing lead until the woman was in tears. She saw him steal credit for a junior associate's project. But the breaking point came when Cassandra accidentally bumped into him near the water cooler. She had apologized immediately, but Trevor saw an opportunity to perform for his audience. He had started with insults, "filthy nobody," "waste of space." And when she calmly told him that everyone deserves respect, he snapped. He grabbed the cleaning bucket a janitor had left nearby and upended it over her head. Now, standing in the puddle of water, Cassandra felt a shift. The shock was gone. In its place was a cold, iron resolve. "Are you done?" Cassandra asked. Her voice was quiet, but it carried to the back of the room. Trevor laughed, a cruel barking sound. "Done? I'm just getting started. Get security up here. I want this rat dragged out of my building." "Your building," Cassandra repeated. She reached into the soaking wet pocket of her blazer. "You deaf? Get out!" Trevor stepped forward, raising a hand as if to shove her. "Don't touch me," she said. It wasn't a plea, it was a command. She pulled out a phone. It wasn't a cracked burner phone. It was the latest prototype model, encased in platinum, a device not even available to the public yet. Trevor paused, his eyes narrowing at the object. Cassandra tapped the screen 3 times. "James, bring the board members to the 4th floor, immediately, and bring the termination papers." Trevor's brow furrowed. "Who are you talking to?" "Put that away." James is the head of global security, Cassandra said, her voice steady. She looked Trevor dead in the eye, and the board members are currently in the conference room on the 40th floor, awaiting my quarterly review. Your review, Trevor faltered. A nervous titter ran through the office. The elevator doors pinged. The heavy double doors slid open, and 4 men in immaculate suits stepped out, led by a tall, broad-shouldered man with an earpiece. The man, James, scanned the room instantly. When his eyes landed on Cassandra, soaked, shivering, but standing tall, his face went pale. "Miss Wynne," James rushed forward, shrugging off his own jacket to wrap it around her shoulders. "Good God, ma'am, are you injured? We tracked the distress signal from your phone." The room went dead silent. The name hung in the air. Wynne. Trevor Huxley's face drained of color. He looked from James to the woman in the wet, cheap blazer. "Wynne? As in Cassandra Wynne?" Cassandra didn't look at James. She kept her gaze fixed on Trevor. She slowly shrugged off the security jacket, letting everyone see the humiliating state she was in. "You said this building wasn't a refuge for losers, Trevor," Cassandra said, stepping closer to him. The water squelched in her shoes, but she walked with the grace of a queen. "You were right. It's a place for professionals, which is why you no longer work here." "Ms. Wynne, I didn't know," Trevor stammered, backing away until he hit the photocopier. "It was a joke, a hazing ritual. We do it for all the new—" "You abuse your staff," Cassandra cut him off. She turned to the room, looking at the shocked faces of the employees. "I have heard the stories. Today, I lived them. This ends now." She turned back to Trevor. "You are terminated, effective immediately. You will leave your company phone and laptop on the desk. Security will escort you out." "You can't do this," Trevor shrieked, his composure shattering. "I'm the best manager this branch has." "You're a bully," Cassandra said coldly, "and you're trespassing." "James?" The head of security nodded. 2 guards stepped forward, grabbing Trevor by the arms. As they dragged him toward the elevators, kicking and shouting, Cassandra turned to the rest of the staff. They looked terrified, expecting the wrath of the owner to fall on them next for witnessing her humiliation. Instead, Cassandra smiled. It was a tired smile, but it was genuine. "I apologize you had to see that. Go home. Everyone take the rest of the day off with pay. Tomorrow, we start over, with a new manager and a new culture." As the employees began to whisper, relief washing over the room, Cassandra walked toward the elevator. She was still wet, still cold, and wearing shoes that were falling apart. But as she stepped into the lift, no one saw a beggar. They saw the most powerful woman in Chicago,